I love when coaches, consultants, and professional service providers want to do big things in their business. They want to rise to the top and influence their market and the world around them. They want to have a greater impact and make a more lucrative income. Well, if this is you, welcome to Expert in You Podcast, the show where I interview other experts and coaches, consultants, so that they can share their success strategies with you. We're going to talk about marketing and how to close more sales, how to get more premium clients, and how to really build your visibility in the market and scale your business like a boss. If this is you, welcome to the show. I want to ask you to subscribe and hit the notification bell right now so you don't miss one episode. Grab your coffee and buckle up because we are ready to give it all to you to help you become the expert and get paid as the expert that you are. Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you back to another episode of Expert in You Podcast. I am excited to be back with you this week as I interview expert Jason Cercone. Jason, welcome to my show.
And thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
I'm excited to talk to you because we do some things that are similar, but Jason is really in the podcast space, which, hey, we're on a podcast, so you know I believe in them. Okay. But I really want to talk to Jason because he has a brand called Evolution of Brand. And I just love everything that he's doing out there. He's doing some great things to really help people elevate their brand, get on guest podcasts, create their own podcast, all of those things. And so we are going to dive into all of his expertise and let him share his wisdom with us around what you should and shouldn't do if you're thinking about a podcast. And yeah, I think this is going to be a great show, Jason. I'm super excited to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. I agree with you. I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
You call yourself a brand architect.
I do call myself that, yes.
Explain that.
So really what I'm helping people do, I lean very heavily on the podcast space because I've been in podcasting for, as we sit and speak today, and almost 8 years.
That's a long time.
It is. And I've learned a ton in this space. And one of the biggest things that I take away from podcasting is the ability to grow your personal brand and your business brand through this medium. There's nothing like it. There are so many outlets that you can take advantage of. But to me, podcasting offers so much, and there's so many advantages, which I'm sure we're going to get into as we have our conversation today, Ann. But for me, when I'm helping people build their brand and construct blueprints and all of these different things, I was saying all these things out loud, and I was like, I'm like an architect. And then I fall back on my love for Seinfeld, and George Costanza always wanted to be an architect. So now I get to be one.
I think you're dating yourself a little there.
Maybe, but Seinfeld's going to stand the test of time.
You think so? Yeah.
I 100% think so.
I love it.
But that was really where the name was born from, because I'm always looking for the best way to help people build and construct their brands.
Yes, that's awesome. That's so important. And oh my gosh, we're going to talk about how many different ways you can use your podcast, which I don't think a lot of people think about. And when you said 8 years, and I knew that, you were like in podcasting before podcasting was a thing. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was really starting to come of age, but it was still a little bit of an unknown, I think. And because I've talked to people on my podcast that were the OGs, like they got this thing going, and I came in a few years later, and there's the evolution to use a pun was it's been pretty incredible, even from when I've been in it 8 years ago. What we have at our disposal in regards to utilizing this platform is light years ahead of what it was. And then even before then, like I said, these guys were doing some tremendous things to really pioneer what has become one of the most popular medias on the planet.
Yes.
So I look at my time in this space as a constant evolution. I'm constantly trying to learn more about the space. I consider myself a student of the game. so to speak. I love
we have
listening.
to stay students, don't we?
Oh, 100%, because these platforms are constantly evolving. I keep going back to that word, but everything is evolving and changing. And if you don't stay on the cutting edge of it, you're going to miss some things. And from that, we'll miss some opportunities. So I'm constantly looking at what other podcasters are doing, trying to up my game and get better at what I do. And you have to be a student of the game in order to do that effectively.
Yeah, I love it. So I know this is going to be a really, really great show. So let's just go back a little bit, Jason, and maybe share with my audience, how did you get into this?
It's a funny story, and it's
we like funny.
Yeah, I will tell everyone that you don't do it this way. This is usually my first piece of advice, but this does make for a good story. So my friend and I had been kicking around ideas about starting a podcast. We just didn't know what to do. We're big sports fans. We were big wrestling fans. All these things. We're like, well, is this what we want to talk about? Do we want to build content around this? And at that time, this was 2014, I was working in the craft beer world. I was doing craft beer advocacy, as I called it, because I think of where we are now in 2022. A lot of people are very aware of all of these breweries and what they're doing and how they're bringing a more superior product to the market. Back then, not as much. And I started this site and it got some traction. Then I started doing some promotion and marketing for some different bars and breweries in Pittsburgh, where I'm located. And I decided to launch an app that would be this one-stop shop to connect everybody to events that were happening across town. And I got some partners from it. People were loving the idea. And as soon as I launched the app, I had this guy start trolling me on Twitter about how it was a terrible idea and how everything I was doing was wrong. And I was going back and forth with him, not even really knowing what a troll was at the time, but just him saying all these things to me. But like, as he said them, I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, you're not wrong. Like, I've thought about all this. What the hell is happening? And so I looked at his profile and discovered that he hosted a beer podcast. And so immediately I texted my friend and I said, I've got our idea. We're going to do a beer podcast and we're going to do it better than this guy. You want to talk about
you just inspired me. You inspired him.
I'm like, it's my number one lesson. Yeah. Do not start a podcast out of spite, because we did no preparation. I think we put maybe 2 weeks of thought into what we were doing. We got some microphones. We recorded our first episode in a noisy bar. We probably got somewhat of a pass on that because it was a beer podcast.
I was just going to say it kind of works.
But at the same time, I remember I was saying, well, do we just want to talk about beer? My buddy was like, no, we'll talk about sports too. So now we're off on two different niches. Everything we did was wrong. But I always look back on that with fondness because it rekindled this spark that I had. I had a radio show in college and I absolutely loved it. And I lightly looked into pursuing radio as a career, but not too seriously. But I always enjoyed being behind the microphone and having this ability to connect with people. And my radio show had a little mix of talk and a little mix of music. So we covered all the bases. And when I started podcasting, I'm like, oh, I'm home. This is bringing back a lot of great memories. And I really want to excel at this. So my friend and I, we did this podcast as long as we could. We had some great experiences. We met some awesome people and took it as far as we could go. Mm-hmm. I started a second show, and about 20 episodes into that, I realized that if I really want to get good at this, I have to commit. I have to take some time to really learn the fundamentals of voice and how can I truly put together a product that people are going to want to consume. So shut down that show and took a year and a half to just study. Mm-hmm. And it was a little crash course associate's degree in podcasting where I listened to other podcasts. I was listening to radio personalities, people on TV, mainly for how they were conveying their message, how they were communicating with their medium. And I was able to take a lot of what I learned and apply it to my skill set. And then when I got back into podcasting after that year and a half had passed, I could tell there was a big difference. Mm-hmm. And that's morphed and evolved into a lot of different things. And now I'm doing podcasting and podcast marketing, coaching, consulting full time. I love every second of it.
You have brought up so many gold nuggets in that, whether you realize it or not. First of all, I love that you did jump in and all of that, but I do love that you then determined I need to improve my skills in this area if I'm going to be a real pro. If I'm really going to do the very best I can in this space, I need to invest time in building that out in the right way and developing those skills in myself and in what I'm doing. And that's such an important piece. But here's the other piece that I really want to talk about, because so many people are out there and they realize they need to get better in this or better in that. And they take those steps, but they never implement. They don't take action. Yeah. And so that's why I said there were a lot of gold nuggets in there. You actually, first of all, you did kind of start it yourself. You weren't afraid to take a step back and say, okay, this isn't working the way I want it to. How can I pivot this, or how can I shift this, or what do I need to do different to actually be serious about this and get it to go where I want? So that is the mark of a true entrepreneur, being able to make those changes and not get frustrated and quit and all of that, which is what a lot of people do. But then you said, okay, this is what I need to do to develop the skills. But then beyond that, you just started taking action and you just stepped into it fully. And there are 3 really important lessons right there, if people just listen to that. So thank you for sharing that.
I've already got a hat trick. This is great. Right out of the gates.
I never thought about it that way. No, that's great. But I also love that you kind of did it the hard way too. I mean, I think us doing things the hard way is also where our passion comes from, to help other people not do things the hard way, the blood, sweat, and tears, right? I say that goes with it. But one of the things, Jason, I know about you, because we've had a lot of conversation, is that you really talk about the fundamentals. So before we dive into all of the amazing reasons people should think about a podcast, or at least guesting on a podcast, and we'll get into all of those, I want to talk about what you mean by the fundamentals. What are some of those things that you cover?
Well, I think, it really depends on what direction you want to go with podcasting. If you're looking to start your own show, there's some fundamentals there. If you want to just be a guest on podcasts, there's some other fundamentals that you want to be aware of as well. But overall, I think that it really comes down to developing your voice and learning how to effectively communicate. Because when you're on the microphone, people will tune into podcasts for a number of different reasons, but pretty much never for a sales pitch. So if you are constantly turning on your microphone, and this could be for your own show or for a guest appearance, and you're in sales mode, just trying to sell while you're the greatest person in the world for this person to do business with, and they have to buy today, that doesn't really attract people. In pretty much all cases, it's going to repel them. So you're defeating the purpose of having this method of communication, because if you utilize it correctly, by having these fundamental steps to just having a conversation. And that, to me, is really where it starts.
Yeah.
And when you were on my podcast, I know one of the big things I said before we even got started was, my goal is that we just have a conversation today and my format doesn't get looked at, because I'd rather have that organic conversation where we're just riffing and bouncing ideas off of one another. To me, that's more engaging radio. That's more engaging content, because
you never know where it's going to go. And the most powerful, it's almost like somebody gets a sneak peek into our conversation, Jason.
Exactly. And when someone tunes into that, that's going to keep their butt in the seat, because we are in a very short form, grab attention, quick world. And podcasts are no different. Now, podcasts are more long form, but if you don't set the table for somebody in those first couple minutes and let them know what they're going to learn, they may bounce. Yeah. Or if you don't deliver on what maybe the show description says, this is what this podcast is about, but once someone turns it on and you're not delivering that, they're going to move on to another show that does give them the value and the knowledge and perhaps the answers to a question that they're looking for. Yeah. But when they do tune in, they're going to be drawn and really kept in place by the engagement that you and the host and the host guest dynamic has to have that chemistry to make people want to listen to the whole episode. And that's really all what it's all about. And to me, there's got to be this fundamental skill of having a conversation and just letting things flow naturally. If you do ask questions, great, but don't get so tied to a list of questions that you miss a follow-up to a great comment someone makes just because you're trying to get all your questions asked. This is a fundamental skill that you have to work on.
I feel like questions, I sometimes feel like questions pigeonhole the conversation, and it doesn't let it just naturally flow. The best shows I've ever had where the most value came from them were always when there was just a flow, where we were just having conversation. Like I said, it's almost like, you're a fly on the wall and you're listening to our private conversation that we're having.
Exactly.
So I love that. I do want to add something to it though, because I always look at things from the business growth side, right? One mistake I see people making, and I would put this in the same category as a fundamental, is they don't really think about the end result they want their podcast to be for them. And so I believe that you need a strong strategy. And so you figure out what are you planning to do with this podcast? Like, what's the purpose for it? And what are you trying to do? And then you can reverse engineer, and then you can create that podcast to be what you want it to be, so that you get the results you're looking for. And I think a lot of people start a podcast and there's really no thought. In fact, I used to host clubhouse rooms, and I helped people host podcast rooms as well. And over again, people were just like, oh, I want to start a podcast and I have a message to share. And I'm like, okay, but what do you want that podcast to do? Do you want to get sponsors? Do you want to make money with it? Do you want to get clients? Like, what is the purpose for it? Because if you don't think about that, you're just going to a lot of times be more noise. Do you agree with that?
100%. There has to be a strategy involved. If you're going to use it as a means of communicating with your audience, for generating leads, for bringing new people into your orbit, if you're doing it haphazardly, there's really no chance that it's going to serve you the way that you need to. And more than likely, what's going to end up happening is you're going to get frustrated by the fact that it's not working fast enough, and you're just going to cancel your show.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And really, and that's where, unfortunately, podcasts, the whole podcast industry as a whole is plagued by this, because many people start shows and stop shows so frequently that they don't have a chance to really gain traction with an audience, because they're here today, gone tomorrow.
Yes.
And if you're not focused on your plan, or you just didn't develop a plan, well, there's no way of building that audience, because you have to have some sort of guide. And this is, to talk about building blueprints, this is usually the first step I give anybody when it comes to starting a podcast, is you need to answer some serious questions about how you're going to develop this content, and then remain loyal to the audience that you build. Because if you start getting inconsistent and you start, I'll do an episode this week, and maybe in a month later, I'll throw another one out there, there's no chance for the audience to get used to your podcast being a part of their life.
Absolutely.
People now will bring podcasts to the gym with them when they go on walks, when they're in the car.
I was just going to say exercising. That's when a lot of people listen to podcasts and take them in. That's right. For driving in the car.
And the power of that, being in somebody's ear for that extended period of time, can really be a huge shot in the arm for you and your brand.
100%.
But if you're doing it wrong and not adhering to those fundamentals, or just doing it once in a blue moon and when you feel like it, people will immediately turn to a podcaster who is showing up consistently and giving them quality content every single time.
Right.
So having that plan of attack is enormous.
And I'm so glad you're hitting on the consistency piece, because one thing that you and I had a conversation around, creating a podcast, there is work to it. I have VAs that help me run a lot of the stuff and do a lot of the stuff. And I have a team that does things. And so you have to realize there's money and time that goes into a podcast. And if you're not prepared for that, and you have to be consistent, I think I'm on episode, 110 or something like that. Consistency is just key to making that work. But if you don't realize up front, hey, it's going to take time. It's something that you have to think, it's got to be a big vision. And it's got to be a long-term vision, not just what you want to do today because it feels great and you just think you want to fire up a podcast. There's a lot more to it than that, right?
Oh, there absolutely is. And to go back to what you were saying a few moments ago about reverse engineering, and I will tell everybody from the start, if you want to talk about reverse engineering, it starts with the thought process of, do you even want to start a podcast yet?
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of value in it. However, you just mentioned a lot of the items that sometimes get overlooked, and that's the time commitment, the financial commitment.
Yes.
And then all of this has to fall into place so you can remain consistent, so you can build a loyal audience. So I typically ask people, what is your objective? What do you want to leverage podcasting for? Based on that, it might make more sense for you to be a podcast guest versus starting your own show. And there are a number of advantages when you go down that path, because not only are you going to open up a world of benefits for you and your brand, but you can also get comfortable on the microphone. If you've never had a podcast before and you're not accustomed to going on shows, maybe putting in those practice swings is going to tell you that, oh my God, I love this. This is how I want to build my brand. I'm going to keep going with this. Maybe then it does make sense to start a podcast. Or you learn, this isn't for me. I'm not going to do this. Now you haven't wasted thousands of dollars on equipment, and not saying that all equipment costs that, but you're not throwing money away on equipment that just collects dust on a shelf somewhere.
Yes.
Or you discover that all I need to do is podcast guesting. This is doing everything that I need. I'm making great headway in regards to my brand growth. I've got SEO benefits coming. My visibility is growing. I've got new people connecting with me.
Well, you're already jumping into the next part of this podcast, Jason.
Sorry about that. But that's really where it's at when you start to reverse engineer the thinking. So really it comes down to that reverse engineering of the complete thought process of what you want a podcast to do for your brand. Yes. And again, when you start thinking on a different level, you may discover that the guesting route is the better path, because it will save you time, energy, money, and allow you to develop a skill set that could translate into your own podcast down the road. But at least then you'll be coming into it with a little bit more experience, and you will have built a network of other podcasters that you could reach out to and say, hey, I'm starting a show. How would you like to be a guest? Yeah. It makes it a little bit easier to get the ball rolling.
I want to hit on the guest thing for just a minute, because I think a lot of people don't realize the power in guesting. First of all, you get to leverage other people's audiences. So that's a really important thing. When, that you actually get to be in front of other people's audiences, and then that's going to live on their platform and on, their content for a very long time. So that's another way to get more reach, but without having all of the work and everything that goes behind a podcast. So I really like that. The other thing is it really helps in your positioning. So if you get on syndicated podcasts, one of the things I help people do is build their positioning online in their brand so that they show up as an expert, so they can get high paying clients and bring in high end clients. So part of that is being Googled, right? If somebody Googles you and you've been a guest on syndicated podcasts, so you want to be a little bit selective, maybe a little bit different than what you're saying. You're saying, get out there, just put yourself out there, start building your voice, start getting your voice going. But even being a little bit more strategic to help that elevate your brand and your positioning online and build that credibility factor. So if you have never been on stages or spoken or anything, then yes, just get out there and start doing it. But if you have, but you just haven't made the leap into doing your own podcast, then be a little bit more strategic with where you guest, so that it can actually do something for your brand and for your business. Do you agree with that, Jason?
I do want to add a caveat to that, though. If you are going to go the guesting route, don't just go on any random show, because it's not going to serve you. The strategy starts from the first correspondence you make.
Yes.
And you need to be reaching out to podcasts that align with your mission, your message, and your brand objectives.
I agree.
Because if you land a guest appearance on a podcast that has no relevance to your world, that's probably going to be difficult, because if the podcaster is truly building content for a specific audience and then sees you as something that won't serve that audience, or someone that won't serve that audience, they're going to say, no, this isn't a good fit. So that works both ways. So you have to look for shows that are aligned with what you want to accomplish. And that, again, building that blueprint from the start, you have to understand what you want to accomplish, what your goals and expectations really are with being a podcast guest, and then start finding shows that are in your space so your expertise can truly shine.
Yeah.
And when you do that, that's when the ball starts rolling downhill and things just pick up and more opportunities are going to come your way.
Oh, 100%. So I just got like this thing came to my brain and I thought, okay, this could be a blast to do this. I've never done this on my show before, Jason.
All right.
So, we know there are so many benefits to a podcast. So what I thought we would do is we would this would be sort of rapid fire. You would say one thing podcasting can do. I'll say one thing podcasting can do. And let's see how many things we can come up with, how many benefits we can come up with.
I love
Sound
it.
like fun?
That sounds like a lot of fun. Let's do it.
And hey, if it's really bad, we'll just cut it out. Okay. So I'm going to let you go first. One thing podcasting can do for people.
Enhancing your network.
Okay. I'm going to say, get you clients.
SEO benefits that you would not believe.
Get you more reach online.
A new way of building evergreen content.
Getting speaking engagements.
Why am I blanking? I usually know this list like
I'm throwing you off because we're going back and forth.
Yeah, I think that's because I'm on the spot now. The ability to create content that reaches a global audience.
I would say building great alliances and partnerships.
Softening the sales process and giving people an opportunity to learn more about you before they ever connect with you.
Influencing buyers.
Influencing sellers.
Getting sponsors. Monetizing.
Yes, that's a great one. Generating revenue for your business. Some people generate revenue that serves them completely through their podcast.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan comes to mind. He's one of them.
Yeah. I mean, Liz House, I think of a lot of them, right?
Absolutely.
That is their whole business. And you can even get people to pay you to be on your show. So there's lots of ways to monetize a podcast that I think a lot of people don't think about. So that was fun. If you're not convinced that there's lots of benefits to a podcast. Oh, the other thing we didn't talk about, did we say like build relationships with people?
No, I mean, I think I kicked off with enhancing your network. And I feel that is probably the greatest benefit, because if you are bringing someone on your podcast, or if you're strictly a guest and you're positioning yourself as a resource to that podcaster, the chemistry is going to be there to have a good conversation. If you're bringing value to the mic and you're getting to know somebody, and you never know what that new relationship could bring, because you may have a service that maybe the person that you're talking to, maybe the host of the show, they don't need it, but they know 5 people.
That's exactly right.
So if you come into this from the mindset of bringing value, that I'm going to build a new relationship and get to have a great conversation with a like-minded person today, that's going to take you far.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is treating it like a transaction, to where I just show up and I talk to Ann for half an hour and then I turn the mic off and then we never talk again. There's no value in that.
Yeah. And, I have to say, I just want to say total transparency. When I first started my podcast, some of the people that I brought on my show, strategically, they weren't really a good fit. And some of those first people, I never spoke with them again, because when I got them on my show, I realized there wasn't even any reason to have them there. It wasn't helpful to my brand. The podcast probably wasn't even really helpful for them. And so, you kind of learned some of those things the hard way. I should have had a Jason to kind of map that all out for me.
Sometimes it's good to learn the hard way, though. You learn lessons and then you build from there. Like I said, starting a podcast out of spite, I will never do that again. And I will advise anyone else not to do the same. But if I had never done it, I wouldn't know that advice would even be something that needs to exist in this world.
Right. And I think that brings us kind of back to the strategy too. If you don't have a strategic plan from the very beginning, you're probably not going to want to stick with your podcast for the long term. If it's not doing anything for you, if it's not bringing you anything and it's just work and it's just time and money, you're not going to stick with it. And so that's also the power. And we mentioned so many things there that a podcast can do, but it all still really starts with the strategy. And I don't think we can stress that enough. Know what the end game is you're trying to accomplish with your podcast. And there's multiple uses for it, but you still have to really know, do you want it to build your business? Do you want to monetize the podcast? Do you want it to get more speaking? How do you want to use that? And then you can really get it. Then it's a powerful, powerful tool. I want to share one other thing with you that I actually work with a brilliant coach and who's light years ahead of me. And one of the most phenomenal things he said is that podcasting is one of the only things that brings people to the same level. So let's say you have a guru and then you have somebody who's kind of just starting out or whatever, and you invite them to be on your show and shine a spotlight on them. All of a sudden, it brings people to the same level of status.
Yeah.
And I thought that was incredibly powerful to think about that, because I've been able to build relationships with people and I'm not afraid to reach out to the people that I want to talk to because of my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it just lends credibility. And most people love to get on and talk about themselves, right? No matter who they are, and they love to build their brand and have a light shine on them. So it really is a powerful, powerful marketing strategy. For all of those things we talked about, but also to get into conversations with people that maybe you would never have the opportunity to get into conversations with.
Could not agree. Oh yeah, I could not agree more. And that's a mindset thing, right? Like you have to be thinking about the people that you're bringing on your show. If you are just starting out and you were to get some big guru that may have a VIP status, officially or unofficially, attached to them,
Mm-hmm.
if you go into fan mode and you don't maximize that time that you have with that person, you're costing yourself an opportunity and you're costing your audience an opportunity. Right. And this is one of the big things that I'm focused on these days with podcasting, because I feel like we're getting to a point where clearly this medium has got tremendous growth. There's people coming in droves to listen to podcasts. Yeah. Businesses are investing thousands, if not millions of dollars into advertising on podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have compelling content to keep people tuned in, because there's so many new shows that if they do stick around, they're, like I said before, some are starting and stopping at will, but if shows are actually coming to the market with a purpose, with a plan, and they're bringing this quality content, that's going to start bringing people into their audience. Yes. So the average podcast listener, or the most avid podcast listener, this is a statistic that I've seen, listens for about a little under 7 hours a week of podcast content.
That's great to know. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're not creating content that keeps them in place, they're going to find another show that is.
Yeah.
So you have to be thinking on this level of creating killer, engaging, compelling content. And so if you have a guru on your show, don't waste time in fan mode. Really get into it and ask some deep questions. Really make them think, challenge them to have the best conversation that they've ever had on a podcast. That might not happen, but if you're striving for that, it's going to make for more engaging content. So when people hear you, if you have struck that balance to where the guru and you just starting out are on that same level, now people hear that and they start to look at you as a guru as well. And clearly you know what you're talking about. But if you're not creating content and asking deep, engaging questions that allow for a good conversation to unfold, that's an opportunity missed. Yeah. So again, my big focus now is helping people have compelling conversations. If you're a guest, bring some compelling questions to that podcaster before it ever goes live, so they can create a format that caters to your expertise. But when they ask you those questions, I call them conversation starters. It does just that. It sparks a conversation. That way, when people tune in, they hear a good podcast, they hear your message, they start telling other people they got to listen to that. The show grows. Everybody's happy. And that's really what this is all about. This is a big collaborative effort. And if everybody's happy in building these podcast episodes and building these podcasts as a whole, we all win. And that's a pretty good thing at the end of the day.
I love it. And you have such a great radio voice too, Jason. Just
I appreciate
throwing
that
out there.
I just jumped into voiceover work because so many people had told me that. I finally said I'm leaving money on the table if I don't start doing this. I'm
that's so
narrating
smart.
audiobooks and explainer videos. So
another income stream. Yes,
that's right.
I love it. No, this has been so great, and I love that you gave some really, really good tips there. If you are going to invite kind of a guru to your show or somebody who's where you would look at them as like you said you're a fan. Yes. I love that. Get out of fan mode. That's cool. So, gosh, I know you and I could talk all day. We already kind of have.
Yeah. Actually, this has been fun.
It has been fun. So, Jason, you've got a couple of programs that you offer. You want to talk about those?
Yeah, I would welcome everybody to jump over to my website, jasoncercone.com. I have a program that will allow us to work together on a smaller scale. But like I had just said a few minutes ago, one of my big passions right now is helping podcast content become more compelling and more engaging. So audience growth becomes real and tangible. And I would love to have a conversation with you to help make sure you're doing just that. You're bringing compelling content to the forefront. So if you're a host, let's talk about the questions you're asking. And if you're truly digging deep enough to bring up those very powerful answers that will spark a good conversation. And if you're a guest, let me help you build some engaging conversation starting questions and bring those to the forefront. So if you're into this in any capacity, this will easily be the best $200 you ever spend. But if you want to go a little bit deeper and really take advantage of some intensive training, my Guest Accelerator program is an A to Z comprehensive program that covers everything about podcast guesting so you can truly get results from your guest appearances.
I love it. That's perfect. And we will put all of his links and everything in the show notes so you can go connect with Jason. And he's on LinkedIn, he's on Facebook, he's all over the place. And you can go listen to his show. What is the name of your show, Jason?
My podcast is called Evolution of Brand. And as we sit and speak today, Ann, I just released episode 108. And
so we're about in the same place.
About in the same range.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Although you've been doing it 8 years, I have not. So,
well, Evolution of Brand is coming up on its 1 year anniversary, but podcasting as a whole, 8 years. Yep.
Yes. That's incredible. So I love it. And I hope you got a lot of value out of this show today. And Jason, it's just been such a pleasure to speak with you today. I was also a guest on his show. And so we've kind of been running for a while now here.
Yeah.
For each other, but it's been just a pleasure. And I know people are going to get so much value out of this. So connect with Jason. If you're interested in his program, you can click the link and go connect with him for his program as well. So Jason, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you,
brand architect.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Ann.
It was fun. Thanks again. And everyone, thank you so much. And if you need help growing your business into multiple 6 and 7 figures, and you want to do it with high-end clients, then you can book a call at acarden.com and let's have a conversation. And I want you to know that a podcast is something that I also help my clients do, but I don't do the stuff like Jason does, but we actually use it as a lead generation tool and something to build partnerships to really scale their business. So that's the way I use podcasting, not just to bring out great content and value, it does that too, but also strategically to grow your business. So that's one of the reasons I wanted Jason on here, because again, we could work very closely together and really help people in this space and in this market. So thanks so much. Until next time, everyone, God bless you. Bye-bye. If you've enjoyed this episode, I want to invite you to go check out a free training that I have at expertinu.us. It is a training that I have on how you can get ultra premium dream clients, scale your business, get more freedom, and really simplify your business and multiply your money. So go check that out. And again, that is expertinu.us. I want to thank you for being here with me this week. I hope you found massive value. Please always leave a comment, feedback, or a question. We check them all.
And I want you to go rock your business, and make sure you join us again next week. God bless you. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.